Founder and Chief Technology Evangelist of James Brehm and Associates.
So we've got a couple of really good speakers today, and because we're up against a time crunch, I'm not going to introduce them. What I'm going to do is, we've got a great topic, and the topic is, does digital transformation start at data or the business process? So what I'd really like to do is have both of the speakers introduce themselves with respect to that question, that topic, and how it relates to their job on a day-to-day basis.
All right, I'll start. Good morning, my name is Mike Troiano. I'm responsible for AT&T's IoT product management, organization, and strategy across both enterprise or industrial solutions as well as consumer. And so to the question, I guess it's an interesting question to start off with, but that's not actually how I think most of our customers address the world. The question that we often see, or the conversation we often have with customers, is really around two basic use cases for IoT. Either you're trying to create a new product and therefore create a new revenue stream, or you're trying to drive operational efficiency out of your business through the assistance of IoT. And the companies that can do both are in the bonus round. I think about, for example, let's pick on a connected car example or a connected tractor company who might have started off on their IoT journey to actually drive operational efficiency within the business, right? How do I start to see real-time information coming out of these tractors or cars so I can build better products more efficiently or more effectively? You think about the tractor example for just a minute. Back in the day, a tractor company sold a tractor to a farmer. It might be 6, 9, 12 months before that product management organization actually got real-time feedback, or I should say real feedback, relative to what was working and not working. Now you get it real time. So that's the efficiency piece. But then you turn it into a monetization model. And I think, if you take a look at General Motors, for example, who's a fantastic customer of ours, have you noticed their advertising lately? They're not talking about horsepower and the traditional metrics that we grew up from an advertising perspective looking at. They're talking about Wi-Fi connectivity in a vehicle. So that gets to the transformation in opening up a new revenue stream. So I look at them as a company or an example of those that are in the bonus round. So again, I don't think it's a process or data lead question. It's really around both, and how do you actually maximize that opportunity?
Chris?
So hello everyone. My name is Chris Moorhead. I'm the VP of Strategic Accounts at Gemalto for the IoT division. I guess this is a very interesting question, and from our customer base, they're really looking at expanding the markets that they're addressing, where a lot of people have their business cases in maybe the US starting off. They're looking at expanding globally and to do so as efficiently as possible. What we're seeing is that there are a lot of changes in the networks globally, and to plan out a global deployment, you really have to be strategic with your design process to make sure you can reach all the individual markets. What we see is very interesting use cases where people have primary and secondary markets that they sell their products into. So they want the bleeding edge technology for their primary markets like Cat 1, Cat M, but then after a 3 to 4 year lifespan of their product, then they'll be reselling it into a secondary market where where it will be maybe 2G or 3G. So when they're designing their products, they really have to take into account where the product is going to be going in the short term and where it can potentially be going in the long term. And that's what we help our customers with.
Great. So Mike, when a lot of companies out there think of AT&T, they think of connectivity first. Can you share a little bit about how AT&T is working with their customers beyond connectivity?
Sure. So the question's really around how are we as a carrier transforming beyond basic transport. I will tell you, transport is what pays the bills. It keeps the lights on. So, that is job number one. We have to do that not only domestically, but to your point, more and more of our customers are asking us to solve the problem globally. They're also asking us to solve regardless of communication paths. So for example, last year we launched or introduced a satellite offer. So you think about, going back to that connected tractor example for a minute, a tractor coming off a factory line can have satellite or cellular radios in it depending on coverage. One of the customers we talk about publicly quite a bit is a relationship that we have with Maersk Line, which is one of the largest shipping container companies in the world, where we actually play the role of a systems integrator. So to your question, James, getting beyond pure connectivity, where we are the responsible party for the hardware, the software, and helping them implement and deploy that solution. What they're doing is they're tracking and monitoring almost 300,000 refrigerated containers around the globe in about 140 countries every day. When those ships are out on the ocean, they're communicating via satellite. When those ships get close to shore, it rolls over to the cellular network. Again, a good example of how hardware, software, pro services, managed services help to transform that. Another very quick example, though, we announced just a few months ago, is a relationship with one of the world's largest elevator companies. And in their example, this was, how do I monitor the elevator, the equipment, the mechanics? And there was no off-the-shelf solution to do that. They didn't have the wherewithal within their IT organization. And so they actually turned to us and they said, can you build out a monitoring solution on your tools and platforms? And we actually did that for them. And so we're responsible for the software build, the management of that software, as well as helping them and advising them on which sensors to use within the bowels of the elevator shaft. But oh, by the way, they have 30,000 mobile workers. I mean, their mobile workers don't have an office. Their truck is their office. And so we worked on a solution that actually bridges IoT to that mobile field worker so that there's an elegant solution for those people that are dispatched out in the field to actually remotely or very quickly manage and fix the assets at hand. So a couple of good examples.
You know, Mike talked to Chris. Mike talked a little bit about those solutions. But from your perspective, you know, what's a successful deployment look like for you guys? You know, how does the customer come in? How do they get engaged? And you know, can you take us through, you know, maybe a best case of how deployment's been?
Yeah, definitely. I think that the best case scenario for us is a customer that's coming in and already has a proven business case, already has a channel, already has an end customer, and then is very well educated on the M2M IoT ecosystem. They know exactly what they want to accomplish with the device, which regions they want to go with, which carriers they also want to go with, and they're aware of some of the pitfalls that come around with developing cellular. What we like to also see are people that are self-aware. I think that cellular integration, especially RF, is sometimes a voodoo science. And so we like customers that know their capabilities, and then they bring in experts to help them in their integration, whether it be some of their RF deployment or even some of their back-end infrastructure. And so what we like to see is somebody that has a clear business case, clear use case, set a realistic integration time frame, is very understanding of the costs and limitations that will come with an integration, and then they bring in the experts where necessary. And from our point, we have a lot of experts on hand. We have a lot of engineers based in the US that are there to take the customer through the integration. And we see the most successful people are the people that utilize our experts, because we've seen hundreds, if not thousands, of cellular integrations. We have an anechoic chamber that we can utilize to do pre-certification and prototype testing. And what we see is that our largest, most successful customers utilize our expertise to help them get to market. It's usually the startups or the people that are, you know, maybe on their first or second deployment that try to keep their cards close to their chest. And they're usually the ones that face the problem. So it's the people that bring in the experts, know what they need to accomplish, and then utilize our support.
Do you mind if I build on that? So we actually stepped back and looked at the market late last year, and one of the things that we realized, if you look at the number of deals that we closed well over 500 deals in calendar year 2016, but if you start to look at time to revenue, okay, so you cut a deal and then you say, well, when is that going to start billing? You get into some interesting conversations about why things aren't moving the way you had originally forecasted. And for us, it came back to, in many cases, customers actually didn't have the business case done. They didn't have broad buy-in across the corporation. So if you think about business transformation, making sure all the business units are fundamentally aligned. A lot of questions about security. That is the number one issue on the hearts and minds of customers. And so what we realize is that many of the projects weren't stalling because of technology, they were stalling because of front-end business planning, as well as the life cycle and managed services piece at the back end, right? So now that I've launched it, what am I going to do to actually scale and manage? And so we actually launched a professional services engagement organization back in January to focus in on IoT. And we just looked at our February results. The top 5 largest deals AT&T did in the month of February, 5 of the 10 included professional services engagement. So I think it's great when a customer walks in and they've really thought through this entire thing end to end, but more often than not, they haven't, right? And they need a lot of assistance trying to go through that journey.
And to that point, it's part of the sales organizations to sometimes give the hard facts to customers. Where, listen, you're not going to be able to do this integration. Why not have a white label product? There's lots of existing products on the market that are doing what you need to do. Why not just buy that product, get to market quickly, prove your business case, instead of dumping a lot of money into the engineering resources to do a cellular integration. First phase, white label product, and then own the software, and then if the volume gets large enough, do a cellular integration.
We did some end user research last year, and our findings were that about 70% of enterprises out there are actually doing something in IoT right now. Either they've started a deployment or they've started down the path. Are we getting to that snapshot in time where they're not looking at point projects, right, to just save money, I'm going to deploy a fleet solution, but they're looking at this from a holistic and transformational process within their organizations?
I'm not going to make a general comment like that because we see all certain, sizes of customers who are different points in the journey, whether they're domestic or they're thinking about global expansion. But here's what I would have said, where I've seen a shift. And by the way, our studies are similar. We actually have said that by 2020, about 45% of the IT budgets will actually be set aside to focus in on IoT. So IT organizations are certainly playing a different role. But here's what I would have said. If I backed up 3 to 5 years ago, IoT in a lot of cases was really a science project within the IT organization. They were testing whether or not, for example, cellular was good enough to replace wireline technologies. And then we saw an interesting shift about 1.5 years ago where chief marketing officers, chief strategy officers, and in some cases CEOs were actually coming to our IoT briefings because they realized that there could be a competitive threat with IoT, and they wanted help thinking through how to position their company so that they weren't left behind. And then I would say in the last 9 months-ish, what we saw is those CEOs, chief strategy officers, chief marketing officers grabbed their CTO and CIO guys and gals and said, you must be at the table with us, and we've got to think through this holistically across the enterprise to your point. And so for some customers, yes, we are seeing them step back and they're thinking about this more holistically across all of their business units so that they don't get stranded with technologies or certain partnerships that might not allow them to scale across the business. But again, for every customer I could tell you that's doing that, there's probably 10 who aren't. And so you have to think through that logically when you have that conversation and try to steer them toward the right path, but they're not all there.
Yeah, and I think that the days of business development in IoT are past. I think that there's so many projects that have been rolled out that have very clear business cases, and you can look at the profitability of these deployments that you can go to these companies and they have to look at it because it's very clear that they're going to be saving money using IoT.
What I've heard both of you say is that collaboration is important, both inside the enterprise but also outside. So I'll ask a question about the ecosystem. Mike, you use the word professional services, right, as something that you guys have launched. Yep. But you also talked about the role of systems integrator at AT&T. How important is putting together the right ecosystem and having the right partnerships and right tools, and also maybe comment a little bit about developers and the role of developers?
So collaboration is key, and anybody who comes in and tries to paint the picture that they can solve all problems for you, I think is misleading. And it's actually forced us even to evolve our strategy. If you would have backed up 2 years ago, We had just launched an IoT application development platform where we had said to customers and developers, build on our platforms, and we've got the tools and the resources, and we still have that platform. But the journey on collaboration, to your question, is that as we rolled that out, some of the biggest enterprise customers that we work with said, hey, it's great that you've got this platform for IoT development, but you've got to figure out how to work better with Microsoft, with IBM, with AWS, with Salesforce.com. And that took us down a very different route where the collaboration with some of those companies is really, really deep now, where our platforms are fully integrated with theirs, and we're doing things that we never would have contemplated a couple years ago. GE, we announced a relationship a number of years ago with GE, but just recently in the last 45 days or so, we announced a strategic relationship with GE where we're going after cities, smart cities together, to deploy industrial lighting solutions. So GE builds the solution, AT&T is the exclusive distribution channel for that lighting in our smart cities efforts. Again, a fantastic example of how collaboration of two well-known companies with global scale have come together to build something. I don't think we could ever figure it out how to do that on our own, alone. And then the question on developers, just very quickly. We launched last year not only the platforms, but some development tools and starter kits for IoT application development. So you can buy a kit that has hardware, it has connectivity, it has hooks back into our platforms for you to start tinkering. And I'll tell you just a very quick story. Back last November, a developer for the city of Holland, Michigan, bought one of our developer kits. Over Thanksgiving break, pounded out a quick proof of concept. Is anybody here from Holland, Michigan? Quick show of hands, no? So in Holland, Michigan, they actually run pipes under the sidewalks, and they in essence heat the sidewalks so they don't freeze over. And what this developer did was he built a very quick prototype. After Thanksgiving, brought it back to the city works people, and he said, listen, if I could monitor the sidewalks to see if we're actually ensuring that there's no ice over, is there value? And of course, the city people said, of course. I don't have to roll a truck. I've got real-time information. That person actually posted their recipes out on the web. We picked it up. Within a few weeks later, he was actually at our developer conference speaking on stage about how quickly he built the proof of concept in a matter of a week and a half, and then was out pitching it to the broader city works people. So my point is, there are tools that we'll put out there. There are developers we'll never meet. There's solutions that may start very, very small for a use case and then start to blossom and bloom. And so our perspective is we've got to arm that developer ecosystem so that they have the tools, the ability to develop things around the globe, all hours of the day, because we can't pick all the winners and losers.
From my side, obviously with collaboration with people like AT&T, the Qualcomms of the world, you can look at the mid-range to long-range planning, but I always look at how well you're interlocked with these companies to fix some of the short to medium-term issues. And with IoT and IoT cellular deployments, it's not a matter of if you're going to have a problem in the field, it's always a matter of when, and how well all the companies that have buy-in work together is how well you're going to fix the problem. And one of the examples that we saw was there was an alarm panel company using our module, using our module which utilizes a chipset, which was on a specific network, using a specific RAN vendor. Well, the network updated the RAN, and it caused about 15,000 units to go dark. And it was because ourselves, our customers, the chipset vendor, the carrier, and the RAN vendor all had a really good working relationship that within 2 weeks we were allowed to sit down, figure out the problem, realize that it was just the firmware upgrade, drop the firmware back, all the devices went back up. That it was the relationship that we all had working together that made it so that the devices could stay on the network. So that's one of the things that I always say, that when you're looking at the partners that you're going to work with, it's how long have they been in the industry, how well are they connected to all the major players, because it does affect you once you deploy in the field, those relationships.
If you guys could give some advice to anybody that's looking to deploy a solution out there, are there a couple of things that they need to look to avoid in doing their diligence and their process and their development?
Yes, sir.
I think kind of just to my previous point, is really talk to all the major players in the industry. I mean, there's a lot of different messages about what technology should be utilized, where it's going to be deployed, you know, what the benefits of the different solutions are. There's a lot of marketing out there, so just talk to as many people as you can, as many reputable people as you can to understand what the best solution for you is. I mean, there's a big discussion on LP-WAN, there's you know, the LoRa, Sigfox, Ingenues versus cellular, and I think that as you talk to more people that are reputable, the truth will come out, and what your best path forward will come out. So it's one of the things. Just talk to as many people as you can that are reputable, and then you'll get a clear picture.
I would actually say avoid analysis paralysis. I think you want to get started on the journey. You know, we see a lot of customers that, you know, they get so focused in on 32 committees that are looking at things, and then you realize, well, 2 of their competitors already launched something, and they feel like they're now really behind the 8 ball. The other thing is, to your point around vendor selection and having trusted vendors, but really understand what capabilities that they can bring to you. Just a very quick story on security. Security is the #1 issue. There's no argument in terms of what our customers are talking about with us as they think about deploying these. But I'd also argue that there's basic technology that's been out there for years that many of our customers aren't taking advantage of, right, in terms of policy management and such. I'll give you a good example. And this is a true story. It pains me to say it, but it's true. A couple of years ago, we had a customer who put a smart meter on a home in Florida. And somebody took the SIM card out of the meter, put it in a laptop, and went to Asia and ran up a really big bill in a laptop, okay? The company calls us and says, well, we got a really, really large bill. We want you to credit it. And we started to dig into this. And, you know, with our platforms, for example, we have very simple security features and policy management that should have said, you have a SIM and a smart meter that only passes 500 KB per day. When it's passing megs or gigs of data, an alarm should have gone off. Oh, by the way, we have very simple alarms and alerts that say that smart meter is fixed on a location in Central Florida, and oh, by the way, it went outside the geofence, it's in Asia, an alarm should have gone off. So my point is really understand the tools, the capabilities, the platforms that are in front of you today, and take advantage of them in your operations.
So one last question. If we come back here, so we do this thing again, what are we going to be talking about? You know, what's different? Look into your crystal ball and forecast where we're going to be at.
Next year? I think we'll have a lot more use cases, right, as IoT continues to develop and mature. I think, you know, for certain verticals, you'll start to get into the conversation of 5G. What does that do? How do I start thinking about that? You know, I was at Mobile World Congress in Barcelona a few weeks ago. What blew me away, and I remember calling my wife, and she said, what's new on the show floor this year? It was robotics. I mean, robotics. And in order to take advantage of some of those technologies or use cases, technologies have to catch up a little bit. But I think a year from now, it's going to be very similar to where we are today, a lot more focus on security and how that's helping. And then, of course, I think global expansion is going to be really key. Companies that have started deploying solutions in North America are now starting to think about how to really scale it globally.
Yeah, almost the same for me. I think that we're really seeing the narrowband IoT networks rolling out globally. And narrowband IoT is a slightly different use case than the traditional cellular, the Cat-M, the Cat-1. And we really don't know how to really utilize it. I mean, there's obviously for gas and water metering, it's a clear use case, but there's so many new use cases that are coming out for narrowband IoT. And so that's what I'm really excited about, is how people are looking to utilize the technology.
Okay, great. You guys are both going to be around today to field some questions from the audience as well?
Yep.
Okay. Fantastic. I appreciate your time.
Very good. Thank you.